Hello everyone. Welcome to my YNR 24 spoilers. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Victor is Phyllis's primary target, not Kane or Jack. According to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Michelle Stafford's character Phyllis Summers thinks she has everyone and everything under control. However, it isn't considered a treason to hack Kane Ashby's AI software. Phyllis was disappointed that Kane had abandoned his ambition to acquire the legacy businesses in Genoa City, Wisconsin. Her goal in stealing his AI weapon and offering it to Victor Newman, however, is not to reimburse Kane. Because Phyllis can never forget and has never forgiven him for forcing Marco on her, she wants to set Victor up. She's developing a freelance project that includes asking the mustache for ownership over Jabot in return for the AI program. Kane's reaction to her anticipated scam is not a key component of her strategy, but rather a secondary one. Marco's ear is open. Victor's doppelganger Marco was born years ago in a Peruvian prison. The exchange was made possible by Jack being rendered unconscious and set up for the murder of Kelly Andrews on a secluded island. Phyllis was unaware that the look-alike wasn't Jack or that her husband had been kidnapped. Because Phyllis didn't suspect Marco wasn't Jack for months, viewers were challenged to suspend belief in a number of ways as this plot developed. Victor and Jack eventually agreed, and Braden's character had one of Marco's ears amputated. Although many questioned whether a medical science miracle may let it, the punishment was implemented to ensure Marco could never take Jack's life again. Jack's reluctance to pursue Victor after everyone had returned safely to GC was one of the severe consequences of the foregoing. This couple's second divorce occurred in 2016 as a result of Phyllis's dismay that Jack would not protect her honor. Since then, they have never remarried. It was done by Phyllis Summers, Kane Ashby knows. After meeting Phyllis at the GC Athletic Club, Kane had her followed. Since he owns the building where she resides and has the money to pay his security personnel to follow Red, it should be fairly simple. He was aware that she and Victor had met at the ranch. Knowing in the back of her mind that she had taken his power card, she played the part when discussing that meeting. Kane is still focused on Lily Winters and making amends with their kids, and there isn't much he can do at this time. But Phyllis needs to exercise caution because he is constantly watching her. According to Victor Newman, he agrees. Victor declared his intention to crush Jack to Chelsea Lawson and Adam Newman. If Phyllis gives him the AI program, that will be simpler. Victor, meanwhile, is doubting Phyllis's strategy. He is aware that offering her Jabot in exchange for Kane's pilfered weapon will prevent him from getting what he wanted. Victor's prize was to stick it to Jack. He will therefore leave all alternatives open until this arrangement is finalized. With criminal ramifications indicated, Phyllis seems to want to paint Victor as the thief. One of the best places to find anything related to The Young and the Restless is this website. For YNR news and spoilers, return often. Victor is tricked by Phyllis's corrupted IA program. According to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Victor Newman, Eric Braden, may be able to get a corrupt IA program from Phyllis Summers, Michelle Stafford, which would enable him to seize control of everyone's company in Genoa City. Will Victor be left high and dry after receiving a dose of his own medication from Phyllis? Victor Newman receives an offer from Phyllis Summers. Phyllis decided to steal the AI program and sell it to Victor after being duped by Kane Ashby, Billy Flynn, over it. Victor wants nothing more than to ruin Jack Abbott, Peter Bergman, and Phyllis is aware of this. Victor intends to reward her Jabot for her trouble and use that money to cover the program's costs. Victor only intended to destroy Jack, not Jabot, and losing Jabot to Phyllis would accomplish that goal. In the past, Phyllis had threatened to sell someone a defective copy of the application and give it to someone else. Because she doesn't want people to know the truth, Phyllis has prohibited them from viewing the program. How Victor Newman is destroyed by Phyllis Summers. With this program, Victor will be ecstatic since it will allow him to finally destroy Jack Abbott. But it appears that Phyllis will have installed a Trojan horse, which will subsequently erase Victor's server's computer data. Has the backdown that Kane mentioned being inside the program been identified by Phyllis? Victor deserved what he got, so Phyllis could go on to defeat him and eventually exact the retribution she desired. Will Phyllis ultimately destroy the AI program and ensure the safety of every company in Genoa City, making her everyone's hero? After she accomplishes this, will Phyllis be viewed differently by everyone but Victor? Phyllis Summers demonstrates her value. By halting Kane, Phyllis could make amends, and anyone else who attempted to do so would have had to put Victor and Kane in their proper places and instructed them to stop trying to take over other people's programs. Can Phyllis ultimately demonstrate that the embedded activities in this AI make it far too hazardous to use against your enemies? Phyllis has assured everyone that she will demonstrate her business acumen on par with Jack and Victor. Can Phyllis eliminate the one program that has threatened everyone now that she has it in her possession before it falls into the wrong hands? Is Phyllis going to be the hero who saves Genoa City from impending doom? Phyllis has to deal with 5 horrible retaliation techniques during the Jabot takeover. 5 vengeance plans against Phyllis Summers, Michelle Stafford, may be developing, according to spoilers and updates for the young and the restless. Given that the crafty new CEO of Jabot may be held accountable for her recent behavior, let's talk about the biggest threats that could be directed at Phyllis. Phyllis wants to give Victor the stolen AI program. Phyllis is ready to give Victor Newman, Eric Braden, who is determined to defeat Jack Abbott, Peter Bergman, the stolen AI program. Interestingly, Victor may accomplish his objective without destroying Jabot entirely, which is why Phyllis is so anxious for him to finally give up power. As of the October 28th episode of Y&R, the deal is moving forward. Therefore, it's time to think about the possible consequences that Phyllis might face. She may think she can handle the consequences of making such a bold choice, but she may quickly discover that she faces these 5 vindictive obstacles. The first is that Jack might choose to retaliate, despite their complex romantic past. Jack strikes back at number 1. Diane follows Phyllis at number 2. First of all, if Victor is able to take over Jabot and give Phyllis the reins, Jack could launch a spectacular counterattack. Jack might very well make it his personal mission to bring Phyllis down if she chooses to assume the role of CEO herself and engages in her usual self-satisfaction. In addition, Diane Jenkins Abbott and Phyllis's long-standing animosity is probably going to resurface. Diane will undoubtedly be out for vengeance because Phyllis's plan would enrage her and rekindle their acrimonious rivalry. Number 4. Summers furious. Number 3. Kane's vengeance. When he discovers the proof that Phyllis has been plotting only to profit herself, Kane Ashby will undoubtedly not be happy. Phyllis tried to show Kane that she was a trustworthy person, but in actuality, she is just interested in herself. She must face Kane's fury, therefore she should brace herself for the consequences. Kane has already made it obvious that he will seek retribution if he finds out Phyllis is a traitor. We also need to take into account Phyllis's kids, who will be furious with her actions. After Phyllis attempts this ridiculous prank, Summer Newman is certain to react angrily and might even decide to leave Marchetti. Daniel, number 5, blows up. Daniel Jr. is going to be equally irritated with Phyllis for creating further problems. Daniel could assert that Jabot is for the Abbotts, despite Phyllis's attempts to convince him to take over as COO, or even offer him the company's top job. He might even exclude Phyllis from his life until she repents. Ultimately, Phyllis will face resistance from her children and a number of enemies until she surrenders the authority she seeks to take. Victor will pay a heavy price if he actually follows through on helping Phyllis acquire authority at Jabot. Victor is Phyllis's primary target, not Kane or Jack. Audiences of the young and the restless have been captivated by Phyllis Summers for decades because of her intelligence, independence, and volatility, a combination of brilliance and self-destruction. Her actions regarding Kane Ashby's AI program in the present arc are not just motivated by typical notions of power or retaliation. Under the surface, it becomes more and more obvious that Phyllis's real reason is her unresolved grudge against Victor Newman rather than her hatred for Kane or Jack. Her decision to pilfer Kane's AI system, control its capabilities, and use it as a weapon against Victor reveals the depth of her mentality. A wounded yet strong woman seeking revenge for a past that would not go away. This plotline is an intriguing examination of Phyllis Summers's moral uncertainty, emotional wounds, and her voracious need for power. The Phyllis plan's layers. Phyllis's acts seem merely opportunistic at first view. Phyllis takes advantage of Kane's abandonment of his ambitions to control Genoa City's business community to steal his AI technology. However, this theft is the deliberate beginning of a bigger plan, not just business espionage. Her shrewd strategic thinking is demonstrated by her choice to make an offer to Victor Newman, exchange the stolen AI program for command of Jabot. Phyllis is aware that Victor, who has a voracious thirst for power, would see the program as the secret to complete control. She is aware of Victor's prior manipulation and treachery, particularly his wrongdoings against her during the Marco scandal. Therefore, she intends to set a trap intended to bring poetic justice in addition to selling him a potent tool. The AI agreement is only a front for a long-brewing grudge. The Marco trauma and its persistent influence. Re-examining the trauma that characterizes Phyllis's connection with Victor is necessary to see why he is her true target. Victor masterminded the Marco impersonation, one of the most unsettling plotlines in The Young and the Restless history, years ago. One of the most horrific betrayals Phyllis might have experienced was Victor's release of a criminal doppelganger from a Peruvian prison and his replacement as Jack Abbott. She was actually living and having sexual relations with a dangerous imposter while mistakenly thinking she was with her spouse. The emotional wounds persisted even after Marco was punished, and the truth came to light. Her feelings of loneliness and rage were heightened by Jack's subsequent refusal to exact revenge on Victor. In addition to being a victim of Victor's schemes, she believed that the man who ought to have protected her honor had deserted her. This betrayal wasn't just an incident in Phyllis's life. It was a wound that changed the way she saw the world and made her always ready for retribution. Victor Newman, the greatest trickster, faces off against his rival. In Genoa City, Victor Newman is known as an untouchable patriarch who subverts the law and morality to suit his own purposes. He has used his wealth and intelligence to control families, empires, and destinies for decades. However, Phyllis's present tactic poses a fresh danger to him, one that was inspired by his previous tactics. Phyllis is effectively turning Victor's strategies against him by pilfering Kane's AI technology and maliciously altering it. She has his qualities of ambition, inventiveness, and deceit, but she uses them for her own justice rather than financial gain. Phyllis had foreseen Victor's every move this time, but Victor considers himself a chess master, always a few moves ahead of his opponents. She hopes to pull him into his own demise by presenting him with a golden ticket that is actually a compromised AI program. She wants Victor to suffer the same kind of humiliation and loss of control that he previously inflicted on her. It is not enough for her to outsmart him. A pawn in a bigger game, Kane Ashby. Despite its importance, Kane Ashby's part in this plot ultimately reveals Phyllis's actual motivations. Despite being the initial developer of the AI software, his importance diminishes when Phyllis chooses to turn his creation into a weapon. She views Kane as a tool, and her dealings with him are transactional rather than emotional. Kane is certain that his rage won't stop her from continuing, even after learning that Phyllis has stolen the program. Kane is less of a threat and more of an observer because of his other concerns, which include his broken relationship with Lily Winters and his attempts to reunite with his family. Although his knowledge of Phyllis's deceit is a ticking time bomb, he only poses a small challenge to her overall plan. Victor is the target of Phyllis's true focus, risk, and energy. Her interactions with Kane highlight the extent to which she is prepared to go in order to exact her revenge by contrasting her brutality with his relative moral restraint. Jack Abbott, emotional repercussions and collateral damage. The man who used to be a part of Phyllis's life and heartache, Jack Abbott, is now caught up in her turmoil once more. He is not her intended target, but in her quest for Victor, he ends up as collateral damage. It is painfully ironic that the same woman who once criticized Jack of being weak for not opposing Victor is now doing all in her power to bring that same guy down. Given that she is using the company's control as bait in her bargain with Victor, if her scheme is successful, it could destroy Jabot, Jack's life's work. Thus, Phyllis's behavior crosses a perilous ethical boundary. She puts the people she used to love at jeopardy by persuading herself that her grudge is justified. Another level of intricacy is added by Jack's possible revenge after realizing the extent of her influence. An explosive aftermath is guaranteed because to the emotional undercurrent between them, which is a blend of love, resentment, and unresolved business. Her desire for vengeance against Victor may boost her self-esteem, but it will also rekindle old, unhealed wounds with Jack. Phyllis's technological masterstroke, the Trojan horse. Phyllis's use of technology is one of the most fascinating parts of her plan. In addition to corporate sabotage, she is symbolically carrying out retaliation using Victor's preferred method of deceit by introducing a Trojan horse into the AI program. The goal of this tainted application is to go inside Victor's computers and take down his digital empire from the inside out. In a symbolic way, it is similar to how Victor once used Marco to sneak in and ruin her life. The symmetry is lyrical and terrifying. If Phyllis's plot works, Victor will lose his authority and be publicly humiliated. However, it is still unclear if she will cross a moral line that she will never be able to cross again. Despite being driven by retaliation, her actions conflate justice with obsession. Her plan is brilliant not only because it is technically sound, but also because it is psychologically profound. She is making Victor feel the same powerlessness that he caused her years ago. The repercussions, estrangement, and enemies. There is a price for Phyllis's retaliation. She runs the risk of offending everyone by focusing on Victor. When Kane discovers she has taken advantage of his innovation, he vows to take revenge, starting the repercussions. If her plot puts Jabot's future in danger, Jack won't forgive her either. Daniel, Romalotti Jr., and Summer Newman, her children, will probably be appalled by her spiral into deceit. Because she doesn't want to be associated with the havoc that Phyllis brings into their lives, Summer in particular may cut off contact with her mother. Until she accepts responsibility for her choices, Daniel, who has long yearned for stability, might reject her altogether. In this case, even Diane Jenkins, Jack's wife and Phyllis's longtime nemesis, might discover fresh ways to damage Phyllis's reputation. As a result, Phyllis's pursuit of revenge runs the risk of isolating her once more, winning but alone, triumphant but haunted. Victor's retaliation, a titanic battle. Victor Newman is the only person who could possibly match Phyllis's slyness. Phyllis thinks she is trying to control him, but Victor never undervalues his opponents. His misgivings regarding her offer imply that he is already planning a retaliation. The impending conflict between these two brilliant brains will be more of a psychological endurance contest than a commercial, savvy contest. Phyllis's power comes from her ability to turn treachery into a weapon, while Victor's power comes from his ability to foresee it. Both are motivated by a desire to establish control over those who have mistreated them, and both flourish in anarchy. In addition to being a continuation of their personal rivalry, their encounter symbolizes a conflict between two eras, the new generation of cunning genius portrayed by Phyllis and the old guard represented by Victor. Genoa City will never be the same if either prevails. The moral conundrum of Phyllis, redemption or ruin. Her continual struggle between redemption and ruin is what makes Phyllis one of the most interesting characters on The Young and the Restless. Despite all of her cunning, she is essentially a flawed, impetuous, and passionate human being. If she defeats Victor, it might be a self-liberating act that releases her from the emotional bonds he imposed on her years ago. On the other hand, It might signal her total moral breakdown and turn her into the very monster she hates. This duality is what makes the show so brilliant. Viewers want Phyllis to win, but are also afraid of what might happen if she did. The moral distinction between heroism and villainy is blurred by her decision to employ deceit as a weapon. Her capacity to understand that true power rests in restraint rather than retribution will ultimately determine whether she emerges as a monster driven by vengeance or as a hero who rescues Genoa City from ruin. The repercussions: Genoa City was permanently modified. Whatever happens, Phyllis's actions will change Genoa City's power structure. Every significant family and business will be rocked if she is successful in overthrowing Victor. The repercussions will affect Chancellor Winter's, Jabot and Newman enterprises. However, Phyllis might be shunned, deprived of her supporters, and subjected to the kind of humiliation she once pledged never to endure again if Victor is able to outsmart her. In any case, her plot highlights a timeless reality about the most nuanced personalities in Genoa City. Ambition and retaliation are two sides of the same coin. Identity is at stake in Phyllis and Victor's conflict, not merely power or retaliation. It tells the story of a lady who, despite the consequences, refuses to let the men who deceived her define her.